Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back on the second dev server for update Wind of Change, and it's time to have a look at the new vehicles which are on the dev server itself. Some of them are definitely not finished, but you can at least get the idea of what's going to be coming. The first one is the Mpk Pr12412p. We had a look at this last time. It was sat in the files, and pretty much it is a premium variant of something which already exists, the 12412, which is at the top of the coastal fleet tech tree for the Soviets. So you can just have a variant which you can GE. It has some pretty decent rewards on it, and also at the same time it is very similar to it, just slightly different when it comes to the overall weaponry. The 12412p has access to a 76mm autocannon on the front, which has a really nice first stage of fire. It has a really good reload rate as well, even after that, so this thing will be able to do a lot of damage to stuff. Maybe not some higher things, but definitely some things at the same BR as it. It also has access to some launches, these RBU 1200 mortar launches. It gets 20 of them, so you can fire some mortars. I've never personally found too much use for them, but they do exist on this thing, so maybe you'll get lucky and donk on some people. It gets some torpedoes, which is really nice, some SET-40 torpedoes, so you can see them right here. They go 8 kilometers, which isn't the best, but not the worst, and they travel at 54 kilometers an hour as well. The 76.2mm has access to HE and HEVT, so it would be really good in a multi-purpose role, but won't be too good against anything that has a lot of armor, so this thing will struggle against cruisers and stuff like that, or at least the majority of them. It also gets depth charges if you want an exposed ammo rack, so that's also quite nice on the machine. There aren't too much uses for depth charges in the game, but at least they exist. The other weapon it has is a 30mm on the back. This thing is absolutely nuts. It's basically a CIWS system in a way, so it's very good at AA, very, very fast firing. The AI doesn't really work well with these ones though, they're just overheated all the time, but at least it exists. It also has a tracking radar and a search radar on it as well, so it has all of those nice little bells and whistles. This thing has just a ton of nice stuff. It's a lot of different things just combined together to make it a little bit more impressive compared to some other areas. Doesn't really have a lot of armor, doesn't have a lot of crew, so it's whoever sees the other person first when it comes to this machine. Moving on to aviation, now the J8B has graced us, another vehicle that was in the files before. The J8B being a new Chinese vehicle at rank 7, battle rating 11.3. This vehicle is going to be after the J7E right here, and has access to some interesting weapons, but the more interesting ones aren't really in the game yet, unfortunately. It does have access to 2 engines, the Shenyang Liming WP13As, which together give it a ton of thrust. It also has access to the 23mm, the Type 23-3, with 200 rounds of ammunition. It does have some countermeasures on the vehicle as well, and also has this really interesting under, I suppose, not really rudder, but very similar to what like some of the MiGs have, where it folds out after takeoff, which is super cool. The weaponry that this thing has, it has PL5Bs, PL8s, and PF10s. Unfortunately, the PL8s are not available yet, so we can't see what they're going to be like, but the PL5Bs have pretty good overload, have decent maximum speed, and also pretty good lock-on region. And then the PF10 has a maximum speed of Mach 4, a maximum overload of 35 Gs, and also pretty good missile guidance time, so the PF10 should be pretty nice. Once again, when it comes to the modifications, I don't think these are the final ones. They're going to add some more to the vehicle when it eventually comes out with the customizable loadout stuff they're bringing in. The PL8s, I really want to see what these look like, but unfortunately we can't. And also at the same time, I'm sure you'll be able to bring some IR guided stuff and also the PF10s on top, since they use different pylons. If you have a look here, when it comes to the vehicle, you can see that they use different things. So we'll have to see what goes on with this. It also does have a radar for the semi-actives, so the Type 280 with a decent range and a decent search zone. No pulse Doppler on this thing though, so not as crazy as some of the other things, and doesn't get any of the CCIPs or CCRPs you may be used to from other high-tier vehicles, but this is much more an out-and-out fighter instead of a ground attacker or anything like that, so not too much of a surprise. When it comes to the Israeli ground stuff, there are some additions which are going to be coming in. And just remember, these additions are not exactly finished. The first one is the Gal Batash, and you'll find it at the end of the tech tree after the Magak 6B that we talked about before. The Gal Batash has access to some improved armor on the turret. Unfortunately, it isn't fully modeled yet. You can see the outsiders, though, the rolled homogeneous armor with 150 millimeters of thickness. It also has some extra armor on the front, probably a composite set of ERA as well, and also a little bit in other areas, such as this little area on the top. This is just a heavily upgraded M60, and it has access to all of the smokes that you will have been used to, and it also has access to some of the other ideas which is coming in, such as the M111, and it is also the only M60 right now in the Israeli tech tree that has access to a stabilizer. So at 9.3 you'd hope it had a stabilizer, and it does, but the 871 doesn't, which is quite a big shame. For the vehicle itself. Has a ton of ammo in it, so you don't want to bring this much, but you get the idea. It also has some ERA actually on the top of the machine, you can see in this area here, so it's actually pretty interesting to see. Mainly chemical protection though, so no kinetic, so it's going to be pretty useless, apart from against stuff like helicopters and also against aircraft where it may have a use. And there's also some ERA on these little sides here, so very much upgraded armor-wise. It's 65 tons. Its engine power is a little bit high because we're in arcade. It's actually at 1200 horsepower for the vehicle itself, which is quite nice. And overall, this should be quite a nippy machine compared to the other M60s, even with all of this additional weight in the form of composite screens, rolled homogeneous armor, and also some extra ERA on the vehicle as well. It also gets access to the M426 round, which pens 436, 368, 252 respectively, which is pretty nice to see. Gets the LWS LR combo, thermals as well. This gets a lot of stuff which will make it a very competent vehicle at 9.3. Even though it's still based on the M60, it's a heavily upgraded one, so this one should be in a nice place. The next one's the Shock Kalalef, and as you can see, it's not in the greatest condition right now. A little bit dark, and definitely in a bit of a rough place. It comes between the Turan 4S and the Shot Cal Gimel, so it'll be at 8.0. Because it's at 8.0 with the 105mm M68, that means that the vehicle only gets access to heat and doesn't get access to APFSDS or anything like that. No rangefinder to be seen, does have NVDs, which will be nice, and does have pretty much everything else, which is very similar to the other Centurions which are around the place, so nothing too crazy there. Good gun depression, the standard 105mm reload, decent turret rotation, and the mobility shouldn't be terrible. It should actually have a slightly upgraded engine, I believe, over the Gimel, or no, it's exactly the same, so never mind. Very sad to see. But overall, it should be quite a nice vehicle to be able to play. And then the top of the Israeli tech tree, the Makava Mark 4B. This one is coming in as the crown jewel of the tech tree, kind of like how the Kafir came in as the crown jewel of the aviation tech tree. And what it has access to is a 120mm IMI MG251 cannon, which can fire a pretty interesting round, the M322, which penetrates 589, 497, 340mm respectively. At the same time, it does have thermals. I tested them, they're only Gen 1 unfortunately, but still fine. Has a ton of smoke grenades, so literally has 30 of the smoke grenade launchers, and then plus the additional 12 that you can chuck over the place. Has the LWSLR, fantastic to see, and also artillery and all of that different stuff, even ESS. And the turret on this thing is really beefy. It isn't fully modeled, I don't think, when it comes to all of its components, but if you go into the actual protection analysis for it, you can find that this one, even against stuff such as German Leopard 2A6 rounds, the DM53, the actual lower area doesn't really stop anything, but the engine and the transmission will eat rounds just like the other Makavas. But the actual turret itself, you can see, is really, really powerful. It goes up to 900 to nearly 1,000 millimeters to stop the rounds. It still has the breach, which you can go through. It still has the horizontal that you can kind of go through, so that's where most people aim. But the actual general armor on the turret itself is very, very good. There are holes in it though, like this one, which I'm guessing is for the optical port, so you can take out the two people behind there. You can also shoot for the driver, so he doesn't get the extra protection that the engine does, and take out, you know, the engine and then maybe some ammo in the back, maybe lower glacis it to be able to take out a few things as well. But the main thing is this thing will be more survivable than other machines that you have at 10.3. And remember, at 10.3 you're not going to see too much DM53, which is one of the more powerful rounds in the game. Instead, you're going to see stuff like the M1A1 round, which is not as powerful. So the armor on this thing, at least on the turret, is looking super good. On the inside, it has the 4-man crew, and then the engine, which is just over here, with 1,500 horsepower with the 65-ton machine, meaning that it can canter, and it's also going to be able to go fast forwards and backwards, so in and out of situations pretty quickly. Has this first stage ammo stowage over here, and should have blowout panels on this. We're going to have to see when it actually comes in the game, but I'm pretty sure this should have blowout panels, and also has access to a 50 cal and two 7.62s, one in this little slit that you can actually see here, and then the other one on the top of the machine itself. The Makava Mark IV is looking really nice, and hopefully we'll get some friends around it in future updates to give it a proper lineup. And with some of the other things added to the tech tree, such as hopefully the Terran comes in, and other machines, hopefully this thing will have a better place in the game. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Mega Dino King, Professor X1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R., Barine, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.